All right, how we feeling this morning? Guys, your energy's low today. What is going on? All right, I'm going to try this again. How we feeling this morning? Okay, good.
So much
All right,
better.
you got to give energy if you want energy back, all right? That's just how it works in this house. But we're continuing the series. I think this has been fun. I talked about it and just prayed about it. When God kind of put it on our hearts, what do we want to launch with? This series was what we wanted to launch with, which is like, really, you wanted to talk about sex our first week? Yep, we did, and that's what we did, all right? We talked about it. And then we talked about conflict, which is something I think every single one of us navigates. And then today we're talking about, at first we were going to title this what? What were we going to title it?
Parenting.
Parenting, but we decided to title it...
Raising up.
Raising up. There you go. All right. And so this whole concept is more like, I get that not every single one of us in this room are parents. And I also get that a lot of us, when it comes to our parenting, we're in all sorts of difference. We have young babies, and then we have those of us that are, have their own kids, and then we have kids that have kids that have kids. Like, I get that everyone's in a different space. And so because of that, we thought, you know what, this really is more about raising up. This is really more about looking at, like, who's in my wheelhouse? Like, who do I have impact with? What kind of people, what kind of kids can I see come up in the Lord, and my influence encourage them to look more and live more like Jesus Christ in their life?
Well, and even when we were talking too, recognizing that even if you're a student in the room, you still have impact, whether it is on a younger sibling or a cousin. Like, I watched our 11-year-old this year, Brittany, and watch her love on our niece and our nephews, and the impact that she has to exemplify Christ in their life too. So that raising up really is every generation. Yeah,
which is really cool. So again, no matter in this room if you have kids or if you don't have kids, if you are 10 years old in this room or if you are 90 years old in this room, there is something that we're going to encourage you to glean from today. And that truly has to do with attitude. And you'll hear us say this all the time. The attitude that you come into this room with, more than just like, all right, what are you going to share with me today? And crossing your arms. Instead, like this, God, what do you want to do with me today? How do you want to speak to me today? Then you will take something away from today. I promise you that, all right? Because here's the reality. Culture is trying to destroy the nucleus of the family. Do you guys agree? Yeah. Have you just been around culture lately? It is incredible to see how much culture is pointed at destroying the nucleus of the biblical family and what that actually looks like. And if you look today, there's all sorts of hardships. There's all sorts of things, not just our kids go through, we're going through it too. And because of that, and because of how our kids watch us, they're watching how we handle things, and then also the new dynamics of how they handle things. And not everything we're about to talk about is new. These are things that have been going through generations, but a lot of this stuff is new too. Like the reality of the access to technology. Have you guys realized how devastating technology is that we have it right here? Constantly. And not only do they have this access to technology, what they have access to when it comes to like YouTube, with us having the kids the ages we have, 14, 11, and 9. Like one time, I remember Beckett being around 7 years old, he's techie enough to understand how to get to YouTube. Well, I didn't even have it in my brain yet that he was going onto YouTube. I wasn't even cognizant of it yet. But all of a sudden, he started watching Dude Perfect on YouTube. And then all of a sudden he started watching another video. And what does YouTube do? It suggests what? A next video. And that next video suggests another video. And then another video suggests another video. And all of a sudden he was watching stuff. I'm like, what are you watching? And he goes, well, I started watching Dude Perfect and now I'm watching that. And it devastated me because I was not ready for that. I was not ready for that access to technology and how quickly it took him from watching Dude Perfect, a bunch of Christian dudes doing trick shots, to nudity, basically, like basic, almost full blast. I'm like, what is going on here? Culture is looking to dismantle the nucleus of our families.
Well, and even then it transfers over into social media and this whole idea that we need to portray this image where we see everyone else's highlight reel. And so then we think, okay, well, it needs to be just the right lighting and it needs to be just the right angle and this is how I have to look, to where then when I look at myself in the mirror, it's, well, why is my skin tone 12 different colors and I don't look like this? It's like, because that's filtered and photoshopped and that's not a normal person. But then also the piece of keeping up with the Joneses, even as adults, to recognize so often what we see portrayed, then we're taught, right? Like that's what the social media is trying to tell us is that we need X, Y, and Z to be whatever in this world. And so really being cognizant of that it is so sneaky in this season.
And then you think of other hardships that we face as the nucleus family. We face things like that need for constant entertainment. Anyone out there? This is not just a kid thing. This is an adult thing. This is something I catch myself doing all the time, where I'll be watching a movie with my family. We're having family movie night, and then I'll also be trying to entertain myself by scrolling on Facebook.
Anybody else?
Anyone else?
Let's be
Yeah,
real.
okay, look around the room. Look around. Again, we do this all the time, all right? That's a little bit of what happens where you are needing to be constantly entertained, and not only constantly entertained on multiple levels. Like here, there, like wild how all of a sudden there's these new hardships that come in, and it's dynamic within the family. What do we always say to our kids?
I am not your cruise director. That's our favorite phrase because our kids, no doubt, it's real, right? Do this. Well, I'm bored. We've lost the art of being bored. And having our kids, or even us, have to be creative without something being shoved in our faces and doing it for us.
Yeah, which is kind of wild. Anyone else, I'm 41 years old. I catch myself all the time now going, well, when I was a kid, anyone else do that? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm my parents right now. Like, all of a sudden, but there's some reality to that.
I love your dad, but that's so your dad.
That was my dad, I know. But that's the reality to it, is there's this piece of like, well, I didn't have that kind of access technology. I mean, I played Nintendo. I played Contra, right?
Who do you
Anyone
tell
else?
us all
Contra?
the time was your best friend growing up?
Up, down, left, right, BA, select, start, all right? 2-player, 40 plus, right? You got this, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
That just like flowed out of you.
Don't judge me, okay? Don't judge me.
Judging.
Don't do it. But that constant need for entertainment. And then there's one that has been sneaky.
Tanya, you were spot on, Antonio, when you said the enemy is sneaky.
This one's been sneaky when it comes to the nucleus family and what the enemy's looking to do. And that is this idea of pace of life. The pace of life for our families is another level. And it's one where you're like, well, it's sneaky because a lot of these things are good. They're really good. I mean, sports is really, really good. I love sports. I mean, Beckett's playing baseball. We have another kid that is doing volleyball. We have another kid that does soccer and track. Like, we get it, and it's really good for our kids. But then we also have other things that we're doing on top of that. And then they have their social activities that they're doing. And then we have things that we want to be able to do because we want to have vacations with the kids. And all of a sudden, the pace of life is just so stinking overwhelming. You're like, what is going on? We actually aren't even sitting down for dinner anymore. I came across these stats in, it was the Harvard Business Magazine, so it's not just some Joe Blow making up stats. This is the Harvard Business Magazine, says that when it comes to dinner time, 30%, only 30% of families actually eat together regularly. Think about that for a second. So only 3 of 10 families are actually eating together regularly on any sort of having conversation. And when you talk about that with this other thing I'm about to say, it's going to blow your mind. That when it comes to teenagers, 80% of teenagers say that dinner time is when they are most likely to divulge their lives to their family, to their parents. This is what I'm going through. This is the hardship I'm facing. These are the things that I'm navigating. That's when they would do that. So that means that only 3 of 10 people are actually getting to even have conversation, and that's even if they're being intentional in having the conversation. Do you see how the nucleus of our family is getting destroyed? And without intentionality and without purposeness, and that's without us really being cognizant of what God is doing, we will slowly see our kids fade and fade and fade and fade. And because that's how they see it from us, they'll do it with their kids, and slowly but surely, we will become Israel, where after generations, they forget who God is because they stopped talking about him. And that's what we're going to read today. That's the context we're going to be in. So why don't you guys turn with us to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 through 9. And just as you turn there, I love giving you context because I think context is key. Always at Storyline Church, my encouragement is that you would bring a physical Bible, but that you would also go home and do some homework. You're going to be encouraged here, which is really cool, to be able to kind of hear something, have it inspire you, but you also have homework to do throughout the week. And that is, I want you to read at least the chapter before and at least the chapter after when it comes to what it is we're going to be in. So we're going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 6, but I want you to read Deuteronomy chapter 5, because that's where the 10 Commandments are. So Moses, he's there and he's getting these 10 Commandments. By the way, it's really cool because he's at the same place where he saw the burning bush. At the base of Mount Horeb is where he saw the burning bush. That was kind of the start, for lack of better words, of his ministry. And then where we're at today, he is now almost, for lack of better words, climbed Mount Horeb. He's at the pinnacle of his ministry, in lack of better words, receiving these 10 Commandments, about to lead the Israelites into the promised land, for which they have been wandering for the last 40 years because of their disobedience to God. By the way, the same God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. We've talked about this. Our God is a God of obedience. Our God desires our obedience. And our God, again, we don't like hearing this, but the reality is our God disciplines. That's how we know we're loved. And so he disciplines the Israelites by making them wander for 40 years because of all their grumbling right before they're about to enter the promised land in Numbers 14 and 15. And so the context here is Moses is like the parent. Okay, so as we read this, think of Moses as the parent. And this is how I like to do this in my brain. Moses is like, okay, kids, okay, guys, let's not mess this up, okay? We've been wandering for 40 years. We're about to enter this promised land, so let's do it. All right, kids, let's go. That's literally how I view Moses speaking in this section, because they've missed out. And he doesn't want them to miss it again. What does Deuteronomy mean?
Repeat.
Repeat. And so you'll hear Moses, he receives the 10 Commandments, and he's going to focus and repeat on that first commandment. Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. So let's read Deuteronomy chapter 6.
These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. Hear, O Israel, and be careful to obey, so that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly in a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commands that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates.
Such a powerful section of Scripture. How many of us have heard that before?
Have you guys heard that?
All right. Probably most of us in this room. Maybe the most popular section of Scripture, maybe the entire Old Testament. It's also known as the Shema, which means hear, to listen, to obey, which is really, really cool. But today, when it comes to the Shema, what we're hearing, what we're listening, what we're going to obey, I want to ask this question. What is my responsibility in raising up the next generation? Remember, today I asked you to go like this. So again, no matter where you're at, no matter if you have kids or not, today, all right, God, what do you want to show me? What can I glean from today? What's my responsibility in raising up the next generation?
Well, within that, it's great to start with Moses and recognizing, like you said, his ministry is coming full circle, and that the view is God has been giving Moses all of this wisdom along the way to lead the Israelites, to lead God's people. Because it's hard to be a leader if you can't first be a follower. Moses didn't feel qualified. How many of us feel qualified to raise up this next generation? Good. I love how they're like, oh, nope.
No.
Welcome to the club. None of us are qualified, but neither was Moses. God stood in the gap, and that's why I love how you said that when you're talking about family dedications, is to recognize none of us are fully equipped for this. Mm-hmm. That's where we fully rely on God, and there's such a misnomer too. So often, I hear Christians say, oh, well, God doesn't give me more than I can handle. No, that's not scripturally true. He does give us more than we can handle so that we can fully rely on him and continue to go like this. Like, I don't know how to raise a 14-year-old girl. Jesus, show me how to do that today. Because that's where we get to watch him show up in the midst of all of these hard places in our life. And then in Deuteronomy 6:1, he says, these are the commands, the decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you, to observe in the land you are crossing to possess. God continually comes in and says, hey, Moses, I got you. Here's where we're going to go. Hey, Moses, I got you. Here's what we're going to do. And so it's so comforting as we're raising up this next generation to recognize that when it comes to the responsibility, I get to go, okay, God, I don't have it all. Where will you come in and give me wisdom?
Yeah, and so again, that's the family dedication. That's why we do the dedications. It truly is a moment where you're going, okay, Lord, I'm yours. As parents, help me out here. We need you to stand in the gap for us. That is the power of these moments. And that's what I love about, there's a lot of things in the Bible that are really, they're symbolic. It's opportunity. That's what baptisms are. It's symbolism. It's an opportunity to go, I am dying to my old self. I am being raised again to life. The water is death, back to life coming out of that. Same thing here. That family dedication is an opportunity to go, God, I need you. Again, Danae already just asked the question, how many of us feel equipped? None of us raised our hands because that's the reality of it. No, there is no manual for how to raise kids out there necessarily. I mean, the Bible's about as close as you're going to get to it. It's hard. But if we're going to take ownership, if we're going to look at like, okay, God, what do I have in this of like raising up the next generation? It's really hard to raise up the next generation if you don't first take a look at yourself. Yeah. Like recognize that it begins with you, what you are giving out. I love to say that like what is flowing in me is going to flow out of me. So if I don't take a look at what actually is going on in my life when it comes to my parenting, when it comes to my raising up, when it comes to my influence that I have with the people around me, then it's going to be ugly. And it's going to be hypocritical.
Well, even in Matthew, he says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so it's natural that what's going to be here flows out every day.
Yeah, I think that's a piece, again, when it comes to realizing, let me say it this way, ready? If you don't feel equipped, the reality is probably because you're not equipped. And can that be okay? I'm so glad that turned off. Just to give us that kind of pause for a second. Can that just be okay for a second? Because I get it. I think the other part of culture and the other hardship we face is that we see, this is the part of the keeping up with the Joneses, we see all these best of things that happen on social media, and you're shaming yourself is what is causing you to think, well, yeah, I don't even know why I should do this in the first place.
Or we play it off. Like Jen and I were having a conversation just about how often we play it off like, oh, well, I have it all together, or I've got my everything, all in line. We're so good at this parenting thing. And you're going to hear some things from us today. We have been so intentional and pursuing parenting with having people ahead of us, where dedicating our babies was then asking other parents who are seasons ahead of us to stand alongside us. I mean, you met with another dad who had 2 girls before we had our Beckett, to meet with him on a regular basis of how do you raise girls, because he was generations ahead of us. And so while you may think, oh gosh, well, DJ and Danae, here's what they have, take a deep breath. Again, turn your hands over, because we're still in that season of going like this, of we're learning how to raise teenage girls, and we've never done that before, but strategically allowing people to come into our lives who do love Jesus with their whole heart to speak wisdom into us so that we don't put up a front that we've got this all together.
Yeah, and that piece, again, if it's going to start with us, that's what Moses is trying to say. That's what he's saying to the Israelites in this moment. Hey, so that you, who? Me. And then your children, and then their children after them, that they may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all the commands, all the decrees that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. Again, it has to begin with me first. And if it's going to flow in there with me, then the cool part about that is when it's in me, and like this idea that I'm following God, I am loving the Lord with all of my heart. It's in me. My prayer life is solid. I am engaging in the Lord as often as I know how to. I am surrounding myself with people that are ahead of me. It is in me. Then I really believe that's when God honors vision. That's when God starts to give you more and more vision. When we capitalize on casting vision to our children, to our families, so that we are raising up, powerful things start to happen. I think the problem a little bit with today is a lot of us don't have vision for our families. If I were to sit down with many of us in this room, my guess is we'd be like, I'm just trying not to kill them.
They survived today.
Right? I mean, I was there. I remember being there. I remember thinking,
Oh, yeah.
Somebody asked me the question like, hey, what do you want to do with your kids? How do you want to raise them up? I'm like, I just hope they don't die.
Just get to 5 years old.
Like right now, I just don't want
All of
my
us.
young kid to crack their head open on the ground. Like that's my hope right now. But then having this more intentionality, which guys, again, I love that you said that. Danae and I have been so intentional. It has taken so much work to get where we are, and it feels like we are still so far away. But that's just because, Donnie, we had a conversation over coffee this week, and you said something to me that stuck with me all week long. And you said, DJ, do you remember? He says, there's a light unto my what? Feet. He is a light unto my feet. So that just means, all right, where's the light? It's just the next step. So when Moses is speaking again to the Israelites and he's saying, hear, listen, Israel, and be careful to obey so that it may go well with you. He's casting vision right here. This is what he's doing to the Israelites. He's actually getting them super excited. We read this and it's not very exciting to us. I see Moses like cheerleader. Listen, be careful to obey so it may go well with you and that you may increase greatly in numbers. That's like really honestly probably how he's writing this. Because there's no greater thing for the Israelites than legacy. That was the greatest attribute. It wasn't about money necessarily. They didn't really have money the way we think about money today. It was about legacy. It was about becoming numerous. That's what he's doing. So when he says that you may increase greatly, he's saying so that you may be fruitful, so that your kids and their kids and their kids, you will have a legacy. Your name will be known. And the Israelites like, yeah. I mean, they're getting pumped up. Very much probably getting pumped up. And then he says, in a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God your ancestors promised you, this would have been the other half of what they wanted. Not only did they want legacy, they wanted production. They wanted a fruitful land. They wanted a place to call home. They've been wandering for 40 stinking years with no place to call home. And so Moses is casting all sorts of vision here, and he's getting his kids pumped up. I think a part of what happens in our family is we don't have vision. So when it comes to raising up the next generation, it's like, again, if your only heart is to keep them alive or just to get them into college, then I'm going to challenge you that may not be the best vision. So do you have a vision? Do you have a vision for you? Do you have a vision for your family? For your kids? What kind of legacy you want to have?
Well, and we talked a couple weeks ago about our values cards. And if you didn't get a chance to hear our full explanation on it, you can go back 2 weeks and watch it online. But DJ and I sat down after we went through a really, really hard season. Well, let's be real, we were still in the midst of that really hard season. Mm-hmm. But to really look at what matters to us, what do we feel like God's calling us to value in our family as we raise our kids and as we are intentional in our own marriage. And one of the things we came up with was raising independent, strong children and having a servanthood focus. And so we came up with all these things that were like, okay, everything in our life is going to come down to these values. They're a barometer for what gets our time in our family. And so while, yes, that's so great, and it's like, so great, you want to have independent kids, but what does that really look like with a 9-year-old at home? One of the ways that we have again, got it from somebody else in our life over the years, is we have marble jars. And so these sit on our kitchen counter. If you've been to our house, you've seen these sitting there. They get really dusty. But this is our main one, and then these are each of our kids. And we had a conversation with our kids when they were young. We started this when they were about The girls were in preschool, so Beckett wasn't around yet. And it was so neat because we have a normal standard in our family of being kind, contributing to our home, but then there's also things that are above and beyond. So this is what we would utilize for above and beyond, especially as we were looking at like having a servanthood focus or wanting to raise independent kids, was if we were going to have this value of it, this is where it started. This is the small end of the funnel, where we would institute different behaviors and rewards for them. So our kids earn marbles anywhere between 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, depending upon, kind of the amazing behavior that happened. Kids can't ask for marbles. So it's not like Beckett could be like, well, Mom, I went and took Josh a drink. Do I get a marble? Nope, you can't ask for marbles. But marbles also don't get taken away, because we don't want to take away the amazing behavior that we see in our kiddos. And anybody could give our kids marbles. So even as we were in church, I would have, people that would come up and be like, oh my gosh, Beckett pulled out my chair, or he saw that there was trash on the ground and he started picking up trash on the parking lot. I caught Beckett being awesome. Can I give Beckett 10 marbles? And I'd be like, yeah, Beckett, way to go. And that's instituting the servanthood focus that is such important to our family. So in this season of life, it's been neat because our girls, let's be real, when you're 14, Brooklyn will be 15 on the 18th, which is just crazy to me that we're about to have a 15-year-old. And then with Brittany even being 11, we are finding new things because marbles are not as exciting. They think it's a joke when we're like, gotcha, being awesome. And they're like, I get a marble, which they could care less. Because when they fill up the jar, they got $20 cash that they could do whatever they wanted with. Beckett still loves it. So like even this morning, he was like, I didn't put my marbles in from yesterday. So he was throwing marbles in his jar. But it's been so neat to see, like, even as we've tried to raise independent kids, Beckett does his laundry from start to finish. So in the beginning, it was doing it without grumbling, and it was actually completing the task. Now it's, can he do it without me even reminding him that it needs to be done every single Friday, and have it back in his, closet and hung up and put away to 80% best of his ability, right? It's not going to be Marie Kondo all in his drawer, all perfect. But can he do it to the best of his ability? Because I have a vision of someday him being an amazing man who is loving and serving his family and does know how to do laundry and chooses to do it all on his own. So that's what it looks like from a big, okay, you have these values, but then what does it look like on the small scale of raising kids to do that in our home?
Yeah, and if you're a grandparent and you have your grandkids come over, this is like something super fun that you could do with them. Again, she already said it. It may not work for upper age kids, but it works really well if you have younger kids. This was golden for applying value. So good. So again, just kind of something fun that we've learned, someone gave to us, and we'd love to give to you guys, is just grab some marbles, grab some jars, and it's a great way just to implement values with your family, with your kids. But again, when it comes to this idea of recognizing what value or what piece do I have in raising up the kids, and that is identifying the dangers that are ahead. Yeah. All right? So just to pivot a little bit of what we were just talking about, Israel's about to come into all sorts of danger. All sorts of danger. As they're entering into this promised land, it's not like they're coming into a land that's uninhabited. It has tons of people, and not only does it have tons of people, it has tons of people that are polytheistic and are fully counter God. So he's saying, and this is where he's starting to cast a little bit more, not just vision, but start to kind of heed warning a little bit. He says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is what?" One. Oh, come on, church. The Lord is what? One. Why is he saying this? Again, Deuteronomy, to repeat. He's going back to that first commandment, thou shalt have no other God before me. You guys don't want to do this. And it's interesting, right, that first commandment is the commandment to have no other gods before. There's all sorts of things God could have had as the first commandment, but he chose. The first commandment is, I am first. He's jealous. Our God is a jealous God. He does not want our attention split between anything else. He wants us, and he wants our totality. And so again, this scripture is called the Shema. This is where it enters into verse 4-9. The Shema, because he's saying, hey, there are some dangers you're about to come into. Guys, pay attention. Listen. Listen, Linda. All right? Anyone else thought about that right away? No one else? Come on. That was me. I thought about that right away. Listen. All right? And that piece, guys, just perk up your ears. You got to know that there's some danger that's ahead. That's our responsibility in raising up. And again, this could be for Bryn that's sitting in the back who's 11 years old. She's gone through life a little more. She was watching a couple of the kids. Our friends came over, Jeremy, you were there. And she's there just making sure Leo, who's like this baby, just learning how to walk. He has that drunken sailor walk. You guys know what I'm talking about?
It's
like
thing
one of my
ever.
favorite things ever, like just watching a kid learn how to walk. And Bryn's like there, oh, watch out for that danger. Oh, watch out for that danger. Oh, watch out. Like, there's power in just watching out. And then when you have like teenage kids, like, again, parents, we know, oh, hey, don't date that guy. Don't date that girl. Why? He's really cute. Yeah, but he doesn't know Jesus. And I tell you, he may be cute, but only cute lasts so long because then you got to live with that.
Yep.
That's how Danae feels about me. All right? Then I lost my hair. I got a little bit fatter. What's going on?
I still think you're cute.
Oh,
babe.
thanks, babe.
Well, and it's even, we had our first homecoming last night, so in my head, that's all I could think of was like, oh my gosh, our oldest going to her first high school dance with this amazing young man. He's super sweet. But even looking at then what is God calling me to be vigilant in this season? If you pause for a second and you think about those things we talked about in the beginning of how culture is trying to dismantle this biblical context of an actual framework of a family, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a mentorship relationship or a cousin. What are you being called? There's a stirring in your heart, no doubt. Like even when we were praying through this, where what is God's stirring something. So maybe pause, write that down in your Bible. I write all over my Bible. There are notes everywhere. But maybe date it. Hey, here's what God's calling me to be vigilant in for my family for this season. And even for us right now, it's recognizing that we are going to live different and trying to raise our oldest daughter and even Brinny to recognize we are not going to be like every other family out there because God has called us. And that just kind of reminded me when we're talking about the beginning of the Shema is like, hold up. Where you're going is polytheistic. You're going to show up different. Would we be willing to show up different for Christ and to say, I'm not going to live like everything else out there. I am going to be set apart. I am going to choose you to be the only one that dictates my life. We're going to say no to things on our calendar because it seems to be like we just want to be overscheduled and then the kids are going 25 different directions and we're not sitting down as a family. Like, what is God maybe stirring in your heart right now to be vigilant for? Because once we're vigilant and we know, like, okay, God, this is what you're calling us to be vigilant for, then we can choose to lead with the right priorities. Then when we cast that vision before Brooklyn and say, hey, guess what? No, we're not going to have you go 5 different places this week because it's a value to our family to sit down a minimum of 4 nights a week around the dining room table with us to have intentional conversation. So no, actually, you're not going to go to your friend's house again. We're going to stay home together and we're going to spend time. Or no, we're not going to play 2 sports. We went through a season where Brooklyn played 2 sports. And we had open conversation about the vision of our family with her, and she chose to play only 1 sport this season.
Now, she got to be a part of the decision making, which I thought was really cool too. That's a powerful piece, is when you do have the teenagers, what we're learning is the more that we give them the power to make the decision, the more that they take the ownership because they got to be a part of making the decision. It wasn't a dictating, it was an allowing them to be a part of it, which is a really, really cool piece too, because why? Again, they want the vision and they want to be able to live out that vision and they want to be able to follow the right path. They want to be able to do the right priorities. They really do. When you've raised them up the right way, they want to follow. So again, when Moses is saying to the Israelites, again, continuing on that Shema, love the Lord your God with all your what?
Heart.
With all your
soul.
And with all your
strength.
He is encompassing the entire being. Our English language is so lame. It is so lame. Moses writes this in Hebrew. So when he's writing in Hebrew, the translation that comes closest to heart, we don't even view it that way. Like when we think heart, a lot of times we think, oh, like that's cute, that's emotion, like yay. But that's not what he's talking about here necessarily. He's talking about that you love the Lord your God with all of your heart means, yes, emotion, but more with all your thinking. The heart was the seat of not just emotion, it was the seat of brain power, your thinking power, and your will power. So he's saying, love the Lord your God with all your thinking, with all your will, and with all your emotions. And when he goes into soul, with all your being, with all your existence. That's what that word means in Hebrew. With everything you have in your being and your existence. And then when he says strength, with all your action. With everything you put your hands to. And so when you read this section of scripture, I love it because he's saying, love the Lord your God with your everything. in the context of, thou shalt have no other gods before me. So now you hear how he just keeps repeating himself. He keeps saying things, kind of the same thing, but in different ways, over and over and over again. And then when you continue, he says, these commandments that I give you today, they're to be on your hearts. In other words, they should be written on you. You should know these things. You should know them because they're a part of your everyday. They're all over you. I was really convicted, for lack of better words, putting this message together. I want you to know, anytime we put a message together, Danae and I live out this message, not just to give it to you, but also to challenge ourselves in everything that we do. I love the San Diego Padres. I love baseball. I love watching them. I love playing baseball. Any other baseball fans out there? All right, cool. I love baseball. I love watching it. And so much so that I can't help because it flows in me and it flows out of me. So when I'm watching baseball, I'm telling my kids all sorts of stats. I'm letting them know, oh my gosh, Arise. It was the first time that's a guy that's on the Padres. You're like, who's Arise? He's the leadoff hitter for the Padres. First time in baseball history that one guy has won 3 batting titles back to back to back with 3 different teams. And I say that to my kids. So my kids are like, yeah, Arise. He hit, he has the batting title for 3 different, like they know the stats too because it's flowing out of me and then they get it too. And I was so stinking convicted this last week because the reality is if I talked as much about God as I talk about baseball, my kids would know God better. Straight up. I want you to know as your pastor, I'm working too, constantly. If my kids knew how much I do love God, I'm not as vocal about it as I am about baseball, and I don't know why, and that's something I need to investigate, honestly. Like, okay, God, why do I, stand up and cheer, but when it comes to church, I'm like, we're talking about great things, and we're like, golf clap, Woo, I'm saved, cool, freed from life of sin, awesome. Baseball! Like, woo, let's go! Why is that? It's something I'm investigating. I imagine it's something that we probably need to investigate too. Probably there's pieces in your own life where you're like, yep, that's me. It may not be baseball, it might be sewing. I don't know. Like maybe somebody like, yeah, sewing! I love sewing! I don't know what it is, all right? But when you make God a part of your everyday, man, it translates.
Well, and I think that there's such a huge piece that when we make God part of an everyday and we choose, our kids catch more of what they see us do versus what we tell them to do. And so here at Storyline, we're actually going to we're going to start something new for us here. And as kids ministry, one of the things that has really pressed upon DJ and I over these first few weeks of gathering together, we used to do this with our kiddos when we were in San Diego at our church there. And before we even had kids, it was such a beautiful moment. All our kids, K through 5th grade, would come into service with their parents. And I'll never forget watching those littles come in, and sometimes they'd just talk all through, or they'd color on the floor in front of us, and they would yell out, or they would be worshiping alongside their parents. And I loved watching over the seasons of parenting, where parents would stand alongside their kids, and maybe they didn't, as a parent, know quite yet how to worship or what that looked like, but as they recognized their kids were watching, they chose to grow in it. Have you ever noticed when you recognize that somebody is watching you, you choose to be a little bit more diligent in growing yourself in it? So as a church, beginning next week, we're going to start inviting our K through 5th grade. You'll go and check them in. You'll bring them in here with you, and they're going to worship alongside you. And we are so excited because recognizing, guys, that it's not just about it being somebody else's kids, but like recognizing that Myra's going to come in next week. I get to recognize that I get to have responsibility in her knowing what it looks like to worship Jesus unashamed and be so grateful that this is what worship looks like. We had the opportunity, the Hawkins family invited our family to attend Elevation Worship Night with them this last week. And it was so incredible to stand alongside our kids and to worship. And I get all choked up when I worship. I'm just so grateful. But I looked over and I saw my 14-year-old and my 11-year-old daughter, arms raised, just singing, I know who I am. You've chosen me. And to recognize, knowing intimately what's going on in their life. Those sweet, tender moments that, while it's not just that, I feel like God gave me that moment to say, Danae, look, I got him. Do you trust me enough that I have them. And so we are so excited next week to have all these kiddos in here with us. And guess what? They may have no idea, and it may be so weird and be like, oh my gosh, they're running around crazy. Great. That's their bodies processing it all. And we want to welcome them in and have them here. And then we're going to welcome them forward, and we're going to pray over them with their teachers. And then they're going to walk, and they're going to go have a lesson that is specifically designed to their hearts and to what they're navigating in their life. They're talking about self-control this month in K through 5, which I think is so apropos. But it's going to be so great as a church body to worship alongside them, show them what worshiping Jesus looks like, and then pray over them before they get the opportunity to hear from God's word together.
I'm so excited about this. And so we'll send out an email to all the parents. Yeah, pretty cool. We'll send out an email so that everyone understands what's going on. We're going to put more chairs in here so there's plenty of seats and things like that. But the reality is we want our kids to do what Moses is encouraging Israel. Impress them on your children. Impress what? God. Like the law, the commands, the decrees, how to live like Jesus encourages us to live. Like impress it on your kids. Talk about it. When you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up, tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses, on your gates. In every arena, do this. And this is a picture of, what is this called again, babe?
Phylactery.
The phylacteries. Okay,
I had to have Google say it to me like 4 times.
That's pretty cool. This is what Israel, what they encouraged, the Jews, would literally write them as a symbol. They would bind them on their wrists.
They write them on vellum, still to this day, and then they put them in these little boxes, and they actually tie them around their heads and bind them to their wrists as they pray the Shema every morning over their day.
Yeah, which
I think is so cool. And so while today we don't practice that in our home, but one of the things that we have done is we are so thankful for the homes that we have. And we choose as a family to recognize that that home is not necessarily just for us. While yes, it is a safe haven, it's also a place of ministry. And that if God's going to give us this home, it's our opportunity to have it be a space not only that we're raising our kiddos, but our kids get to recognize that as they bring their friends and their family, that space is dedicated to honoring Christ first and foremost. So we had the opportunity to rip up our flooring 3 years ago, and we paused. We put on worship music. You can still see all the stuff all over. But we wrote the Shema on our flooring. This is the second home we've done this in. And then we just invited the kids to write whatever was on their heart. DJ wrote scripture all over the house. We wrote scriptures in the kids' bedrooms. But to really recognize, and I love how Beckett's drawing a snowman because this was obviously 3 years ago, but he really loves that we have snow here in Idaho, and it's like his favorite thing. So even like when they're in here worshiping, like it may look different, but this is how kids worship. Developmentally appropriate ways. Like I'm a child life specialist. I can geek out on all the developmentally appropriate ways that kids get to show their love for Jesus. But this is what it looks like. And Brooklyn drew flowers because her favorite thing when we moved here was that she really wanted to be able to have places to be outside and to have a garden. And she's so thankful for what God has created for her to be outside. Most times we'll just find her laying on the grass taking a nap outside. Or being outside with her chickens, because this is the land flowing of milk and honey, and I have chickens, and I have a sourdough starter, and I'm living my best 40-year-old mom life here in Idaho. This is my land flowing with milk and honey. But that's what this looks like, is to really bring your kids into those spaces. And so maybe it is that you're going to repaint a room, and so you're going to let your kids write scriptures that are on their heart, on their walls for a moment before you paint over the top of it, because they'll remember that that's under their feet, or that's over the head of their bed when they're going to sleep, that you've been intentional in the spaces that you're creating in your home.
Yeah, which I think is really cool, and that was a powerful moment. And so we asked this question, like, where's it going to start with us? Like, where will it start with me? All right, I get that when you hear these things, I don't want to discourage you. Again, Danae and I have worked our tushies off being intentional with our family. We have worked so hard in it.
And we know it's not over either.
Right.
Like, I'm so thankful for Aunt Tanya and recognizing that, am I going to choose to lay my kids down at the altar and say, God, you're enough. Like, you have my kids no matter what season, age, stage, no matter what happens in their life, which is one of the hardest things as a parent, like, is so hard, but to choose to be intentional is the biggest piece.
And you may not have been intentional. You may have adult kids now, and you may not have been intentional back then with them, and now you're like, well, I screwed them up. It's never too late to be intentional.
Never.
It's never too late to be intentional. And I want to encourage you. I don't know why. I feel like someone needed to hear that today. Mm-hmm. It's never too late to be intentional. And so as you look up, maybe it is today, you're in a similar predicament as Aunt Tanya, and you're raising up adult kids, and you're like, okay, what can I do to have it start with me? Like, I'm going to do something to see my kids come closer to Jesus.
Well, because they'll sniff it out. Like if it's inauthentic and it doesn't first flow out of us, it's going to feel incongruent.
Yeah. So I'm going to power through these pretty quick because we're running out of time. But look, here's some practical things that you guys could do. Like once a week, have a very intentional meal together.
It seems so simple, but even with, we were thinking like that, you're like as adult kids, maybe it is just stopping and being intentional and not just sitting down, but even recognizing like simple things like you could look on Amazon, there's table talk cards. That's one of our things our family, Chick-fil-A actually gave them out a few years ago. Or they're called story cubes. We have both of those in the center of our table. So when we sit down together, we like tell funny stories from these little dice that the kids roll, and it's like an alien and then like a random tree, and they like tell silly stories or table talk cards.
Well, and again, when you look at what the Shema is encouraging, it's encouraging talking about. That's what it's talking about. It's being a part of it. And so again, even being intentional on car rides or when you're on trips with people of asking intentional questions. Don't let kids put their headphones in.
Oh,
you
no.
don't put your headphones in. Like, don't blast your radio. One of the things that we stopped doing in our car is we stopped playing music sometimes in our car. So there's awkward silence. Guess what happens with awkward silence? A lot of kids start to fill it with questions. Hey, what are we going to do? What's this going to look like? It's a really cool thing. And again, that works with my teenager. My teenager hates silence. So all of a sudden she just wants to talk. And I'm like, cool, let's talk. Let's do it. All right, so we want to give you a practical thing. This is called the Parent Q app. This is what partners with our Orange curriculum.
With our Orange curriculum. So real quick, orange is the yellow light of the church and the red heart of the family. And what happens when we come together to really raise up this next generation. So scan the QR code. You can see everything that your kids are currently learning in their classrooms right now. But also, okay, this is kind of hard. Oh, I didn't bring my phone up. You can create profiles for each of your kids. So it tells us like Brooklyn, our oldest, I only have 212 weeks left with her. So if you really want to start crying, just put in their birthday and what year they're graduating, and suddenly you're a hot puddle mess all over the floor. But we got longer with Beckett, so we got some time. But it also gives you developmentally appropriate questions to talk about throughout your week. There's devotionals for your 4th through 5th grader and even your middle schooler and your high schooler, or conversations even to have at bath time, different activities. You can see the lessons that they're learning. Here's the other fun piece. What if you added in the birthdates of the kids that you spend time with? What if you added in your nieces or your nephews? Maybe they don't come to Storyline. Maybe they don't go to church anywhere yet. But what if you started living your life where it flows out of you, where you learned how to ask strategic, beautiful questions to those kiddos that you get to encounter, even if it is as a next door neighbor, to start loving and raising up that next generation to where they remember that their neighbor was different because they actually asked questions that mattered to the kiddos, not just, how was your day? Fine. If we want better answers, we need to start asking better questions. So I highly encourage you, download this app, put in the profiles, be a puddle on the mess on the floor for just a little bit, because we are really super heartfelt in kids ministry about standing alongside you as a family. The few minutes that they get in that class to talk about Jesus is not enough. It means partnering with the church to really steward and lead your family so that when you are sitting around that dining room table, let this be what you look at real quick to figure out how you're going to continue that conversation with your preschooler, that God really is with them wherever they go, because through the whole month of October, they're in there flying airplanes right now over cotton balls in a kiddie pool, learning that God will go with them wherever they go, and they're going to be talking about it all month long. There's even memory verses. What if as a family, you worked on memorizing the memory verse together so that at the end of the month, when they come back and they get to proudly say it to their teacher, it's because you as a family impressed it on your hearts.
Pretty cool. We had so much to say. This honestly could be like a 3-week series easy on how to raise up all the different stages. But today, my prayer is that you took something. So we're going to do something. Ready? If you took something away from today that was a challenge to you, that you felt it and you were like, yep, this is an area I need to be more vigilant in. This is an area I need more ownership. Maybe there's a piece of conviction you're like, yes, I need to rely on Jesus a little more in that area. If that is you, would you stand up right now? Okay. I want to pray a blessing over you guys. Okay? I know, again, every season of parenting, every season of raising up has its own challenges. I know that you may be going through it. So would you do something it's just symbolism. Would you hold your hands out like this, like you're receiving? Okay? Father, thank you for what you're doing in this place. Lord, a message that it certainly runs the gamut of ages, stages of life, seasons of life, Lord, all sorts of different things that are going on. Lord, I know that some of us have young kids, some of us have old kids, some of us don't have kids, Lord, but we felt your Holy Spirit working in us and through us this morning. We felt a challenge. We felt an area that we definitely could grow in. Lord, I pray that for each and every person here that stood, and maybe they didn't stand, but they wanted to, Lord, I pray that you would just meet them where they're at. Lord, that this week would be a really powerful, super cool week of just seeing your Holy Spirit working in our lives, working specifically in this situation where we're going, God, I don't know how to do this totally. I don't know what this next stage looks like. I don't know what it looks like to raise a teenager or a 2-year-old or a 25-year-old, Lord, but I need you. Lord, would you stand in the gap? Would you show us more of what it looks like to love you with our whole heart, with our whole soul, with all of our strength? Lord, be in this place. In Jesus' name, amen. Would you stand together and let's just worship one more time?